You know it's bad when your own mother tries to humiliate you in front of everyone at your birthday dinner. But what happened next? Well, that was something neither of us saw coming. Emily sat at the dining table surrounded by family, her heart racing as the evening began. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and chatter, but for her, everything felt heavy. Tonight was supposed to be special, a moment of celebration, but she knew her mother was about to make it a night to remember for all the wrong reasons. Emily's fingers tapped nervously on the glass of wine in front of her. She had prepared herself for the subtle jabs her mother always took, the comments about her appearance, her life choices, the ever-present criticism that she had grown used to over the years. But tonight felt different. She could feel it in the air, that uncomfortable tension building between them. Emily's mother, who was seated across from her, had been silent so far, but Emily knew that silence was never a good thing. Her mother always waited for the right moment, the moment when she could say something to embarrass her in front of others. Emily's hand clenched the fork in front of her, trying to keep her composure as she forced a smile. Her mind raced, remembering all the years of feeling inadequate, of constantly striving for approval that never came. The smile on her mother's face only deepened the anxiety she was feeling. It wasn't a smile of warmth or joy, it was a smile that said, "I'm about to strike and you won't see it coming." "So, Emily," her mother began, her voice sweet but with a hint of sarcasm, "how's the new job going? I've heard some things." The room seemed to pause, the laughter and conversations around them fading into the background. Emily could feel the eyes of the guests shift toward her. Her stomach twisted. Her mother had just made her first move. "It's going well, Mom," Emily replied, her voice steady but tight. "Thank you for asking." Her mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Really? Because from what I hear you've been struggling. Maybe you should think about a career change? You know, it's never too late to try something new. Some people, well, they just can't seem to hold down a real job." There it was. The subtle insult, the jab that was meant to hurt but wrapped in a thin layer of concern. Emily's face flushed with embarrassment, but she refused to show her mother the satisfaction of seeing her squirm. "I'm doing fine, Mom. And I'm happy with the path I'm on," she said, her voice calm despite the knot in her chest. The conversation moved on, but Emily could feel the discomfort lingering in the air. Her mother wasn't done. Emily knew this dinner was a battleground, and her mother was just getting started. As the evening wore on, her mother continued with the comments, each one cutting deeper than the last. Emily sat there, feeling like she was suffocating. She had always let her mother's words slide, always let it go, because she didn't want to cause a scene. But tonight something was different. She couldn't take it anymore. Her hand gripped the edge of the table, her heart pounding in her chest. "Why do you always do this?" Emily asked, her voice finally breaking the silence. Everyone at the table fell still, their attention shifting to her. "What are you talking about, Emily?" her mother asked, feigning innocence. "You know exactly what I mean," Emily replied, her eyes narrowing. "You've been making little digs all night, just like you always do. You try to make me feel small and you enjoy it." There was a pause, the tension in the air thickening. Her mother's face hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice cold. "I'm just concerned about you, Emily." "Concerned?" Emily shot back, her anger rising. "Is that what you call it? Because it sure doesn't feel like concern. It feels like you're trying to tear me down, like you're trying to make me feel like I'm never enough." Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. The room was silent now, and Emily could feel the weight of her words hanging in the air. "I'm tired of being the one who's always wrong, always the one who has to prove myself," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "I'm tired of trying to earn your approval, only for you to turn around and make me feel worthless." The silence stretched on, and for a moment, it seemed like Emily's mother was going to say something, to defend herself. But instead she just stared at Emily, her face hard. Emily stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She had had enough. But then before she could walk away, something unexpected happened. Her mother's face changed just for a moment. It was a flicker of something that looked like shame or guilt. Emily wasn't sure, but it was enough. "You're right," her mother said, her voice softer than before. "I've been harsh on you. I don't know why I do it, but I've never been able to stop myself." Emily froze. This wasn't the response she had expected. She looked at her mother, seeing her for the first time not as a critic, but as a woman who was struggling too. Her heart softened, but the hurt still lingered. "Why?" Emily asked, her voice quieter now. "Why would you do that to me?" Her mother looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "I don't know, Emily. I guess I've always felt like you needed to be tougher. Like you needed to be perfect. And when you weren't, I didn't know how to handle it." Emily's anger ebbed away, replaced by a deep sadness. She didn't want to hear excuses, but she understood. It didn't make it right, but it made sense. She had spent so many years feeling like she was never enough, never meeting her mother's expectations, but now she saw that her mother had been struggling too. The hurt didn't go away, but it changed. For the first time, Emily felt like she could finally breathe. This wasn't the resolution she had hoped for, but it was a step forward. The confrontation had been messy, emotional, and painful, but it was also necessary. Emily had finally said what she needed to say, and in that moment, she realized that her worth wasn't defined by her mother's approval. It wasn't defined by anyone's approval but her own. The days after the dinner were filled with an uneasy calm. Emily tried to focus on the positive. She had finally spoken up, and for the first time in her life she had stood up to her mother. But as the days passed, the weight of the words still lingered. It wasn't just the revelation about the bank records that haunted her. It was the years of resentment, of feeling unappreciated, and of always being the one who had to fight for validation. She knew things couldn't go back to how they were, but the silence between her and her mother was deafening. Emily had always feared that their relationship might never be the same again. It was a fear that gnawed at her, keeping her awake at night, but she knew she couldn't undo what had happened. Her mother's words had struck deep, but Emily wasn't about to let them define her. She refused to let herself be the victim anymore. As the weekend came, Emily decided to take control of her life in a new way. She called her best friend, Sarah, and invited her over for coffee. Sarah was a longtime friend, someone Emily had known since high school. She was one of the few people who truly understood her, who didn't judge her for her complicated relationship with her mother. Sarah arrived at Emily's apartment, and as soon as she walked in, Emily could see the concern in her eyes. "You okay?" Sarah asked, sitting down at the kitchen table. Emily forced a smile and nodded. "Yeah, just a lot has been going on. But I wanted to talk to you about something." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What's up?" "I need to stop letting my mom control me," Emily said, her voice steady but with an underlying tension. "I don't want to keep being the person who just rolls with her punches. I want to finally take charge of my own life. I need to figure out what it looks like to be free of her toxic influence." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes full of understanding. "You've been carrying this for so long, Em. It's not easy, but I think you're finally ready to make that change. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." Emily exhaled deeply, a weight lifting from her shoulders as she spoke the words out loud. "I have to stop caring about her approval. I can't keep trying to please her, trying to make her happy. I have to live my own life my own way. And if that means cutting ties with her, then so be it." Sarah nodded. "That's a huge decision, Em. But I believe in you. You deserve to be happy. You don't need to keep making excuses for her behavior." Emily felt a surge of relief. She had been carrying this burden alone for so long, but now with Sarah's support she felt like she had a clear path forward. The conversation with Sarah was a turning point for Emily. For the first time in years she felt like she was making the decision for herself, not for anyone else. The pressure of trying to fix her relationship with her mother, of seeking approval that would never come, had kept her from moving forward. But now Emily was ready to take the next step. That evening after Sarah left, Emily sat down with a pen and paper. She began to write out her thoughts, pouring her heart onto the page. She wrote about the years of feeling small, about the constant need for validation, about how her mother had always made her feel like she was never enough. But she also wrote about how she had finally found her voice, how she was no longer going to be the person her mother tried to shape her into. As Emily wrote, she realized something. This wasn't just about breaking free from her mother's control. It was about reclaiming her life, her independence, and her sense of self-worth. She was no longer the daughter who had to earn love. She was a woman who deserved respect, and it was time for her to demand it. The next day, Emily made a decision. She would call her mother and have one final conversation. She had been avoiding it, unsure of how to handle it, but she knew it had to happen. Emily wasn't going to let her mother continue to manipulate her. She wasn't going to let the cycle of toxicity continue any longer. She needed to speak her truth and set boundaries. When her mother answered the phone, Emily's heart raced, but she held firm. "Mom," Emily began, her voice calm but resolute, "we need to talk." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Emily could hear the tension in her mother's breath. "What's this about, Emily?" her mother asked, her voice already defensive. "It's about you and me," Emily replied. "About how things have been for years. I've been trying to keep the peace, but it's not working anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not." Her mother sighed. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've done everything I can for you." "No, you haven't," Emily shot back, her voice steady. "You've criticized me, manipulated me, and tried to control my life. And I'm done. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep begging for your approval." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, Emily thought her mother might hang up, but then her voice came through, quieter now. "I don't know what to say, Emily." "You don't have to say anything," Emily replied. "But I'm telling you now, this is the last time I'm going to tolerate this. If you want to have a relationship with me, it has to change. And if it doesn't, I'm done." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Emily felt a sense of peace. She had said what needed to be said. She had taken control. The call ended soon after, but Emily didn't feel the anger she had expected. Instead, she felt a strange sense of freedom. She had set the boundaries. She had taken the first step in breaking the cycle. It was scary, but it was the right choice. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was truly living for herself. The following morning, Emily woke up early, her mind still racing with the events of the night before. The conversation with her mother had been more intense than she expected, and though she had finally found the strength to set boundaries, it left her feeling drained. As the sun streamed through the blinds, she sat on the edge of her bed, trying to shake off the exhaustion and the emotional weight of everything. It was hard to believe how much had shifted in such a short time. For years, she had been the one trying to hold everything together, trying to please everyone, to earn approval that never seemed to come. But now, for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was standing in her own power. She could feel the small but important victory coursing through her veins. But the journey ahead was still uncertain. She couldn't pretend that things would change overnight. Her mother's behavior was deeply ingrained, and Emily knew she would have to stay firm. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way forward. After a quick breakfast, Emily decided to get out of the apartment and take a walk. The fresh air felt like a breath of freedom, and as she walked through the park near her home, she found herself lost in thought. She thought about the call with her mother. Despite the relief she had felt after standing up for herself, part of her still wondered if she had done the right thing. Was this really the end of the road for her relationship with her mother? Was cutting ties completely the right choice, or was there still room for reconciliation? Emily didn't have the answers, but for the first time she didn't feel the urgency to make a decision. For the first time she was allowing herself to just breathe. The path ahead was uncertain, but she wasn't going to rush it. She didn't have to have it all figured out right away. As she strolled along the park's winding paths, Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing a message from Sarah. "How are you holding up today?" A small smile tugged at her lips. She quickly typed back, "I'm okay. Just taking some time to process everything." She paused for a moment, then added, "I think I finally did it, Sarah. I really stood up for myself." Sarah's reply came almost instantly. "I'm so proud of you. You've been holding this in for so long. You deserve to be heard." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. Sarah had been her rock through all of this, someone who understood the dynamics of her family without judgment. It meant the world to her to know that her friend was there for her. Emily spent the rest of the day focusing on herself. She went to the gym for a long workout, letting the physical exertion clear her mind. Later, she met up with Sarah at a nearby cafe for coffee. The conversation was light, a welcome distraction from the heavy emotions of the past few days. As they sat at a corner table laughing over a shared cup of coffee, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of hope creeping in. She had taken control of her life, and while the road ahead would be difficult, she was no longer afraid to walk it. That evening, after spending time with Sarah, Emily returned home to a quiet apartment. She felt the need to check in with her mother, but the thought of another confrontation weighed heavily on her. She hadn't expected her mother to respond immediately after their conversation, but part of her hoped for an apology, or at least some acknowledgement of what had happened. Still, Emily knew that if change was going to happen, it would have to come from her mother. It wasn't her responsibility to carry that burden. Emily sat at her kitchen table, contemplating her next steps. She didn't need to fix everything at once, but she did need to stay firm in her decision. She had taken back her power, and now it was time to embrace it fully. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Emily focused on her work, spent time with her friends, and continued to work on herself. She felt like a weight had been lifted, but she also knew that her journey wasn't over. She needed to keep setting boundaries and standing up for herself, not just with her mother, but in all aspects of her life. One evening, nearly a month after the dinner, Emily received a message from her mother. The text was short but surprising. "We need to talk. I'm sorry for how I've treated you." Emily stared at the message, her heart pounding. She had expected this moment, but seeing the words in writing made everything feel so real. After everything, her mother was finally reaching out. Emily took a deep breath. She knew this conversation would be difficult, but she wasn't afraid. She had already set her boundaries, and this time, she would approach the conversation with clarity and strength. She responded with a simple, "When are you free to talk?" Later that week, they met at a quiet cafe. Emily arrived first, sitting at a corner table, her mind racing. She didn't know what to expect, but she was ready for whatever came. When her mother arrived, her face was soft, the hardness from before gone. She sat down across from Emily, her hands folded in front of her. "I'm sorry, Emily," her mother said quietly. "I've been a terrible mother to you. I've always pushed you and I don't know why. I've hurt you and I regret it." Emily listened, her heart heavy but her resolve firm. "You can't take back what's been done," Emily said, her voice steady. "But I need you to understand that this has been damaging. And I need you to stop. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not." Her mother nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand. I've been selfish and I don't know how to fix it. But I want to try. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to change." Emily looked at her mother, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. For the first time in years there was hope. It wasn't going to be easy, but Emily finally felt like they were taking the first step toward healing. "I don't know if we can go back to how things were," Emily said softly, "but I'm willing to try. For both of us." Her mother reached out and took her hand. The gesture was small, but it was a sign of something deeper. Emily wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. The next few days after the conversation with her mother left Emily feeling a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. The weight of finally speaking up had lifted something heavy from her shoulders, but the question remained. Was this truly the start of something better, or just another temporary fix? She had set boundaries, but she had also opened the door to a new, complicated dynamic with her mother. Emily spent the next morning in a fog of thoughts, the weight of her mother's apology still fresh in her mind. As she walked through her apartment trying to distract herself, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from her mother. Emily stared at the screen for a long moment, unsure of what to expect. She had been expecting something, perhaps another attempt to explain herself, or maybe even an apology, but the message was simple. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. Can we meet tomorrow?" Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. Her mother had always used these moments to play on Emily's emotions, to make her feel like the one in the wrong, even when she wasn't. But Emily wasn't the same person she was before. She had taken control and she wasn't going to back down. After some thought, Emily responded, "Okay, let's meet tomorrow." She wasn't sure what her mother expected from this meeting, but she knew it was time for her to be honest, to continue standing up for herself even if it meant confronting painful truths. The next day they met at a quiet cafe. a neutral place where they could talk without the distractions of home or family. Emily arrived early, taking a seat at a small table by the window, her hands folded in front of her. She wasn't sure what her mother would say, but she felt prepared. When her mother walked in, Emily stood to greet her. There was no warm embrace, no apologies, just the coldness that had always been there. Her mother's face was tight, her posture stiff, but there was something different in her eyes, something like regret. Emily motioned for her mother to sit, and they both settled into their seats. There was a long silence before Emily spoke. "You wanted to talk," she said, her voice calm but firm. Her mother took a deep breath before speaking. "I don't know where to begin, Emily," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "I've been thinking about everything you said the other day, about how I've treated you, and I don't know why I've done the things I've done." Emily felt a pang of frustration rise within her. She had heard this before. Her mother's apologies always seemed to come with an excuse, a justification for the way she had behaved. But Emily wasn't going to let her get away with that this time. "You don't need to explain it to me," Emily said quietly. "You've already said enough. What I need from you now is to stop trying to control me, to stop trying to make me feel like I'm not enough. I can't keep living like that." Her mother looked at her, her eyes filled with guilt. "I never wanted to make you feel that way, Emily. But I know I have. And I'm sorry. I've been hard on you because I thought I was helping you. That you needed to be tougher. That you needed to be perfect." Emily's chest tightened. She had heard this before too. The idea that her mother had only tried to help, that it was all for her own good. But Emily couldn't keep excusing it. She had spent her whole life trying to meet her mother's impossible expectations. "I've tried so hard to meet your standards, Mom," Emily said, her voice shaking slightly. "I've tried to be the daughter you wanted, but I can't keep doing that. I'm not. You and I never will be." There was a long silence, and for the first time, Emily's mother looked as though she were truly listening. "I know," her mother said softly. "I never wanted you to be me. I don't know how to be a mother sometimes. I never learned how to do it right. I've always been afraid of losing control, and I've taken that fear out on you." Emily's heart softened, but the anger she had been carrying for so long was still there, lingering in the back of her mind. "I can't keep being your punching bag, Mom. I can't keep letting you make me feel like I'm not good enough." Her mother nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand, Emily. And I'm sorry. I'll do better. I can't promise it'll be perfect, but I'll try." Emily's mind raced. She wanted to believe her mother, wanted to believe that things could be different. But a part of her remained skeptical. She had heard this before. "I'm not asking for perfection, Mom," Emily said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm asking for respect. I need you to see me for who I am, not for who you want me to be." Her mother wiped away a tear and nodded. "I will, Emily. I will try." Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. It wasn't the apology she had always wanted, but it was a start. And for the first time she felt like she was in control of her own life. "Thank you," Emily said softly, her heart heavy but at peace. "I think this is the first step. But we still have a lot of work to do." Her mother nodded, and they sat in silence for a few moments. Emily knew that this wasn't the end of the journey, but it was a beginning. A beginning of healing, of setting boundaries, and of reclaiming her life. The conversation wasn't easy, but it had been necessary. It was a step toward the future. A future where Emily could finally live for herself, without the burden of trying to please her mother. As they left the cafe, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew that she was finally ready to take control. No longer would she be the person her mother tried to make her into. Emily was ready to be herself. The weeks following the difficult conversation with her mother were filled with a quiet kind of tension. Emily had made the decision to stand up for herself, but the emotional weight of that decision still lingered. She spent her days trying to focus on her work and keep busy, but every time she thought about her mother, a knot formed in her stomach. She hadn't heard from her since their meeting at the cafe, and part of her was waiting for her mother to call, to apologize further or explain herself. But the silence between them remained. It was a silence that spoke volumes. Emily knew her mother was trying to change, but she wasn't sure if the change would last. Could her mother truly break free from the patterns of behavior that had been so deeply ingrained for years? Could she truly start seeing Emily as an individual and not just as someone to control and criticize? These questions weighed heavily on her, but she refused to let them consume her. The decision to stand up for herself had been a long time coming, and Emily wasn't about to go back to living in the shadow of her mother's expectations. One afternoon, as Emily sat in her apartment scrolling through her phone, she received a text message from Sarah. "How are you holding up?" it read. Emily hesitated for a moment before typing back. "It's been a lot. I feel like I've done the right thing, but there's still so much uncertainty." Sarah's reply came almost immediately. "You've taken a huge step, Em. I'm proud of you. But I get it, it's not easy. Let me know if you want to talk." Emily smiled at her friend's support, feeling a sense of gratitude for the people in her life who truly cared about her well-being. Sarah had been her rock during the whole ordeal, and Emily couldn't have made it this far without her encouragement. She decided to take Sarah up on her offer. Later that evening, they met at their favorite cafe, a cozy place where they could talk freely without interruption. As soon as Emily sat down across from Sarah, she could feel the weight of everything she had been holding inside. Sarah immediately picked up on it. "So what's really going on?" she asked gently. Emily took a deep breath. "I don't know, Sarah. Part of me feels relieved, like I did the right thing, but the other part of me feels unsure. It's like I've put all my energy into this one confrontation, and now I don't know what comes next. My mom is saying she's trying to change, but I'm not sure if I believe it." Sarah nodded, her expression empathetic. "You've been through so much, Em. It's only natural that you'd feel conflicted. But you have to remember, it's not your responsibility to fix her. You've done all you can, and now it's up to her to follow through. If she doesn't, that's not on you." Emily stared into her coffee cup, her thoughts swirling. I know, but the thought of cutting her off completely, it's still hard to wrap my head around. I never imagined a day would come where I'd have to say, enough is enough. But you've already said that, Sarah pointed out. You've drawn your line in the sand, and that's powerful. You've taken control of your own life, and that's something you've never done before. I don't think it's about cutting her off, Em. It's about protecting yourself and your peace. Emily felt the weight of Sarah's words settle in. It wasn't about cutting ties entirely, it was about creating boundaries. For so long, she had allowed her mother to cross those boundaries, to dictate how she felt about herself, but now that was changing. She was learning to prioritize her own well-being over her mother's approval. "You're right," Emily said softly, her voice filled with a new sense of resolve. "I can't keep letting her control me. I've spent so many years trying to please her, trying to fix things, but I've forgotten about myself. It's time to change that." The conversation continued, but Emily felt a sense of clarity settling over her. She realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and the changes in her relationship with her mother would take time. But she was ready for it. She was ready to take her life back. As Emily walked back to her apartment that night, her mind was buzzing with thoughts. She felt more confident in her decision than she had in a long time, but she also knew that the true test was yet to come. It wasn't just about the conversation with her mother. It was about the long-term process of rebuilding her own sense of self-worth and navigating the new boundaries she had set. The next few days were filled with a mix of reflection and action. Emily decided to take a break from social media, something she hadn't done in years. She realized that constantly checking her phone and scrolling through posts was only adding to her stress. She needed time to focus on herself, to rediscover who she was outside of the constant noise of her mother's criticism and the expectations of others. One evening, Emily sat down with a journal, a gift from Sarah that she had never really used. She opened it to a fresh page and started writing. At first it felt awkward, but soon the words started flowing. She wrote about her childhood, her struggles with her mother, and the ways she had allowed herself to shrink in order to fit into the mold her mother had created. She wrote about the pain she had carried for so long, the hurtful words that had been spoken, and the moments when she had doubted her own worth. But as she wrote, Emily also began to recognize something else. She saw the strength that had always been there, buried beneath the years of emotional wounds. She realized that she had been strong all along, even when she didn't feel it. The act of writing became a release, a way to let go of the emotional baggage she had been carrying. And by the end of the night, Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt like she had a clearer vision of who she was and what she needed. The next day, Emily reached out to her mother, sending a simple text. "We need to talk. I'm ready to take the next step, but I need to know that you're committed to making real changes." She wasn't sure how her mother would respond, but Emily wasn't afraid anymore. She had taken control of her life, and whatever came next, she would face it head-on. The morning after sending the message to her mother, Emily sat at her kitchen table, nervously staring at her phone. She had already made up her mind about the boundaries she had to set with her mother, but still, part of her wondered if reaching out was the right decision. It was hard to imagine things ever going back to the way they were. A part of her feared that this conversation would be just another cycle of empty apologies and promises that would never be kept. But she knew she couldn't keep living in fear of her mother's control. She needed to make a stand. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her mother. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she opened it. "I've been thinking about everything. I want to meet. Can we talk tomorrow?" Emily read the message twice before putting the phone down. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. This was it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew she had to be ready. Emily responded quickly, her fingers shaking slightly as she typed. "Sure. Let's meet tomorrow." The next day, Emily arrived at the cafe early. She had chosen this place because it felt neutral. Somewhere away from the chaos of her home. Somewhere that would hopefully make the conversation feel less heavy. She found a quiet corner and sat down, trying to calm her nerves. She wasn't sure what her mother was going to say, but she knew that she couldn't back down. She had already made the decision to reclaim her life, and this meeting would be no different. When her mother arrived, Emily stood to greet her. Her mother's face was unreadable, the usual coldness that Emily had grown up with still present in her expression. They exchanged a brief, awkward hug before sitting down. "I'm glad you agreed to meet," her mother said, her voice stiff. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too," she said, her voice steady. "But I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This isn't just about one conversation. It's about everything. I need to know that you're serious about changing. About respecting me, not just in words but in actions." Her mother seemed taken aback for a moment. "I know I haven't always been the best mother," she said quietly. "But I've tried. I didn't know how to show love without controlling. I've always been afraid of losing you." Emily felt a surge of frustration. She had heard this before. The excuses, the justifications, the endless cycle of guilt that her mother used to manipulate her. "It's not about love, Mom," Emily said, her voice rising slightly. "It's about respect. I've spent my whole life feeling like I wasn't enough for you. I've tried so hard to meet your expectations, but nothing is ever good enough. I can't keep doing that." Her mother's face softened, but there was still an edge of defensiveness in her eyes. "I never meant to make you feel that way," she said. "I thought I was doing what was best for you." Emily shook her head, her frustration mounting. "You can't keep using that excuse. You've hurt me and it's time to face that. I've had to live my life for you, trying to make you happy, but that's not fair anymore. I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for your approval." The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of Emily's words hanging in the air. Her mother opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Emily took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "I've decided that I can't keep letting you control me. I love you, but I need to live my life for myself now. I've spent too many years being defined by your expectations. I need to move forward with or without your support." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Emily," she whispered. "I've made so many mistakes. I don't know how to fix them, but I want to try. I want to change." Emily stared at her mother, her heart heavy with the complexity of the situation. She had never imagined this moment, her mother, the woman who had always seemed so invincible, admitting her flaws. It was a moment of vulnerability, and for the first time, Emily felt like her mother was truly seeing her. "I don't know if we can fix everything," Emily said softly. But I'm willing to try. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take effort from both of us. Her mother nodded, her face a mixture of guilt and hope. I understand, she said quietly. I'll do whatever it takes. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her body begin to release. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when she could finally start to heal. She didn't know what the future held for her relationship with her mother, but she knew that, for the first time, she was standing up for herself. She wasn't going to let her mother's behavior define her any longer. I don't want to carry the weight of this anymore, Emily said. I've been holding on to this pain for too long. It's time to let it go. Her mother reached across the table and took her hand, a small but meaningful gesture. I'm sorry, Emily. I've hurt you more than I can ever explain, but I want to be better. I want to be the mother you deserve. Emily squeezed her mother's hand, her own emotions bubbling to the surface. I hope you can, she said softly. But it's not just about words. It's about change. The conversation didn't end with a clear resolution, but it was a start. Emily had finally found her voice, and she knew that no matter what, she had taken control of her life. She wasn't going to let the toxic patterns of the past continue. She was ready to move forward, to build the life she deserved. It wouldn't be easy and there would be bumps along the way, but Emily was no longer afraid. She had taken the first step, and that was enough for now. The days following her conversation with her mother left Emily in a quiet, reflective state. She had set her boundaries and spoken her truth, but now the silence felt both calming and unsettling. She wasn't used to the stillness between them. The last thing she wanted was to go back to the way things were before. Emily had spent years in her mother's shadow, trying to meet expectations that were impossible to satisfy, and now, for the first time in her life, she had taken control. She wasn't sure if her mother truly understood the depth of what Emily had said, or if this new dynamic between them could last. But Emily was determined not to let her guard down. That evening, Emily went to her favorite park to clear her head. She always found peace there, surrounded by the calming greenery and the sound of children laughing in the distance. It was a space where she could reconnect with herself, away from the noise of her life. As she sat on a bench, Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. Her heart skipped when she saw that it was a message from her mother. I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about. Can we meet again tomorrow? Emily hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. She wasn't sure what to expect from this next meeting. Her mother had apologized, but was it enough? Could they really repair what had been broken? It was clear that her mother was willing to try, but Emily knew that actions spoke louder than words. She had to make sure that this wasn't just another empty apology. After taking a deep breath, Emily typed back, "Okay, let's meet tomorrow." The next day, Emily stood in front of the cafe where they'd agreed to meet, her heart racing with anticipation. She hadn't seen her mother in person since their last conversation, and the thought of facing her again was overwhelming. As Emily waited, she reflected on how much had changed within her. She no longer felt the need to placate her mother or apologize for being herself. She had learned to accept her own worth, regardless of her mother's approval. When her mother finally arrived, Emily noticed the difference in her demeanor. She was more subdued, her usual defiant attitude softened. The camera captured the vulnerability in her mother's face, as she sat down across from Emily. "I've been thinking about everything, Emily," her mother began, her voice quiet and steady. "I know I've hurt you and I don't know how to fix it. I've never been good at being a mother. I've always tried to push you, but I see now that it was wrong." Emily listened, her heart heavy with emotion. This was the first time she had ever heard her mother speak this honestly. "I've always wanted the best for you," her mother continued, "but I've made mistakes. I've been too hard on you and I never really understood how much it hurt you. I'm sorry." Emily took a deep breath, her emotions rising. She had heard apologies from her mother before, but this one felt different. The sincerity in her mother's voice was undeniable, but it didn't erase the years of pain. Still, Emily wasn't about to let her guard down. You can't just apologize and expect everything to be okay, Emily said, her voice steady but firm. "I've been hurt for a long time. You can't just erase that." Her mother nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want to try, Emily. I want to show you that I can change. Emily was quiet for a moment, processing her mother's words. She had always wanted to hear her mother take responsibility. But the truth was, Emily didn't know if she was ready to forgive her just yet. She couldn't let go of the past so easily. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Emily admitted. But I want to believe that things can be different, that we can build a new kind of relationship. But it's going to take time. Her mother nodded, her face filled with a mix of relief and guilt. I understand, Emily. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. The conversation was a breakthrough, but Emily knew it wasn't the end of the road. She couldn't let her guard down entirely. It would take time for her mother to prove that she had truly changed. For the first time, though, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could build something better, something more honest. As they sat together in silence, Emily realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew that, for the first time in her life, she was no longer willing to settle for anything less than the respect and love she deserved. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was ready to face whatever came next. After their meeting, Emily walked back to her apartment, the weight of the conversation lingering in her chest. She wasn't sure if things would ever go back to how they were, but that didn't matter anymore. She had learned to take control of her own life, to stand up for herself and her own happiness. For the first time in years, Emily felt empowered. She knew that no matter what happened with her mother, she was strong enough to handle it. She wasn't afraid anymore. As she entered her apartment, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had done the hard thing. She had spoken up, set boundaries, and demanded respect. And now she could finally begin to heal. Days passed since the last conversation with her mother, and Emily found herself reflecting on the road ahead. The silence that followed their meeting felt heavy, but it also brought a strange sense of peace. Her mother had apologized, and while Emily didn't fully believe in the change yet, she couldn't deny that something in the air had shifted. The weight of the past few years of manipulation and hurt was still present, but Emily could feel herself becoming stronger, more certain of who she was and what she needed. It wasn't easy to hold on to that sense of strength. There were moments when the old patterns crept back in, when she found herself questioning if she had done the right thing by speaking up. Her mother's reaction had been softer than expected, but Emily had seen that before. She knew that apologies, no matter how sincere they seemed, often came with strings attached. But this time was different. Emily refused to let her emotions be swayed by guilt or manipulation. She had to focus on what was best for her. The journey of setting boundaries had only just begun, and Emily knew there would be more challenges ahead. The following weekend, Emily decided to take a trip to the countryside to get away from the city and clear her mind. She needed space to think, to process the recent events and the decision she had made to stand up for herself. As she drove down the winding roads, the vast open fields and the quiet of nature calmed her restless mind. Emily had always felt a connection to the outdoors, and she welcomed the solitude it provided. There, in the quiet of the small cabin she had rented for the weekend, she allowed herself to fully relax. No distractions, no expectations, just time to reconnect with herself. As the days passed, Emily reflected on her life, on her mother's influence and on her own growth. She thought about all the times she had let her mother's words define her, shaping her actions and decisions to meet someone else's standards. Emily realized that she had spent so much of her life trying to make her mother proud, trying to gain her approval. But what she hadn't realized until recently was that she didn't need her mother's approval to be happy. She didn't need anyone's approval. The quiet moments in the cabin helped Emily see how much power she had given away over the years. She had allowed herself to be shaped by others, but now for the first time she understood that she was in control of her own life. This realization brought a sense of relief, but it also brought a new level of responsibility. Emily knew she had to continue standing firm in her boundaries, not just with her mother, but in all aspects of her life. The journey wasn't over, but she was finally on the right path. After a few days of solitude, Emily returned home with a renewed sense of clarity. She didn't know what the future would hold with her mother, but she knew she had taken the first step toward healing. Her relationship with her mother would never be the same, and that was okay. Emily wasn't looking for perfection anymore. She was looking for respect. As the days went on, Emily maintained her boundaries. She started to take on new challenges at work, feeling more confident in her abilities. She spent more time with friends who supported her, and less time with those who tried to bring her down. Slowly but surely, Emily began to rediscover the person she had been before her mother's constant influence. She was becoming her own person, independent and strong. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult meeting with her boss, Emily received a message from her mother. She hesitated but then opened it. "I've been thinking. I know I've made mistakes. I can't change the past, but I want to try to build something better with you. I understand that it's going to take time, but I want to be a better mother to you." Emily stared at the message, feeling a mixture of emotions. She wasn't sure what her mother's intentions were, but for the first time, she wasn't feeling the pressure to fix everything. She knew it would take time for things to change, and she wasn't going to rush the process. She had to protect her peace, and if her mother was truly committed to making changes, it would be on her mother's terms, not Emily's. Emily decided to take a step back and not respond immediately. She needed time to process this new message, to see if her mother's words were backed up by real change. That evening she called. "Sarah." "Hey, I just got a message from my mom," Emily said when Sarah answered. "She says she wants to make things better. I don't know what to think about it. I'm not sure if I should respond or just leave it alone for now." Sarah's voice was calm and reassuring. "You've been through so much, Em. You don't have to make any decisions right now. Take your time. If she really means what she says, she'll show it through her actions, not just her words. You've done the hard part, and now it's up to her." Emily sighed, feeling the weight of her decision. She had already done so much, and now she just needed to be patient and see where the relationship went. "I know," she said softly. "I just don't want to get my hopes up. I've been let down before." Sarah paused for a moment before speaking. "It's okay to be cautious, Em. Just don't lose sight of how far you've come. You're stronger than you know, and you don't need anyone else to validate your worth." Emily smiled, grateful for her friend's constant support. "Thanks, Sarah. I needed to hear that." The conversation ended, and Emily felt a sense of peace. She wasn't rushing into anything. She was moving at her own pace, doing what was best for her. Whatever happened with her mother, she had already taken control of her life, and nothing could take that away from her. As the days went by, Emily continued to focus on herself and her growth. She was building a life that was independent of her mother's influence, and it felt liberating. She wasn't looking back anymore. The future was wide open, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she had everything she needed to move forward. It had been a few weeks since Emily's conversation with her mother, and the silence between them remained. Emily knew this was going to take time. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, especially after so many years of hurt. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had stood up for herself, and for the first time she had felt a sense of liberation, even in the quiet aftermath. The hardest part was the uncertainty. She couldn't predict how things would play out with her mother. Would her actions follow her words, or would it all be just another empty promise? Emily had learned to guard her heart, but a small part of her still held on to hope. It wasn't about fixing everything immediately. It was about moving forward, even if it meant letting go of the expectations she had spent so long trying to meet. Emily was learning to trust herself, and that was the most important thing. One evening, as she sat on her couch with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, feeling her heart race as she saw her mother's name. "We need to talk. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Are you free tomorrow?" Emily stared at the message for a long moment, trying to process it. Her mother hadn't reached out like this since their last meeting. The question of whether or not to respond felt like a decision that would change everything. But Emily was ready to face it. She wasn't going to back down now. "Yes, we can meet tomorrow," she typed back. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The next day, Emily arrived at the cafe ahead of time, trying to steady her nerves. The air around her felt thick with anticipation. She had taken this step once before, but now she wasn't sure what kind of conversation this would be. Would it be another round of apologies, or would it be something more? When her mother walked in, her face was softer than usual, but there was still a guarded look in her eyes. She hesitated for a moment before sitting down across from Emily. "I've been thinking about everything, Emily," her mother said, her voice low. "I know I haven't been the mother you needed me to be. I've hurt you and I've made so many mistakes. But I want to try to make things right." Emily nodded, her heart heavy. She wasn't sure what she wanted from this conversation. A part of her longed for the comfort of her mother's love, the love she had always wanted, but another part of her knew that this was about more than just seeking validation. "I appreciate that you're trying, Mom," Emily said, her voice steady. "But you need to understand that it's not just about saying the right things. It's about showing up. It's about changing the way you've treated me for so long." Her mother looked down, guilt written all over her face. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be better. I don't want to keep repeating the same mistakes." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. It was hard to hear her mother's apology, but at the same time it felt like a small breakthrough. It wasn't the solution to everything, but it was a step forward. "I know you want to be better, Mom," Emily said, trying to keep her emotions in check. "But I need to know that you can actually change. That you can respect me and see me as my own person, not just as someone you need to control or criticize." There was a long silence, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like her mother was really listening. "I don't know how to do that," her mother admitted quietly. "I've always tried to make you stronger, but I see now that I've pushed too hard. I've never given you the space to just be you." Emily felt her heart soften. This was different. Her mother was acknowledging the hurt, the damage that had been done. "I don't need to be perfect, Mom," Emily said softly. "I just need to be myself. And I need you to accept me for who I am, not for who you want me to be." Her mother nodded slowly. "I understand. I want to try to accept you. I don't know how to change everything overnight, but I want to start. I don't want to keep holding on to the past." Emily's heart ached. It wasn't easy to hear her mother's vulnerability, but it also gave her a sense of hope. Maybe things could get better, but it would take time. It wouldn't be a quick fix, but Emily was willing to try. The next few weeks were filled with a mix of emotions for Emily. She continued to set boundaries, not just with her mother, but with everyone in her life. She realized that she had spent so long trying to make everyone happy, but now it was time to focus on her own happiness. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when she felt the old habits creeping back in, but she remained committed to her decision. She didn't need her mother's approval anymore. She didn't need anyone's approval. Emily was building a life where her worth came from within, not from others. Then one evening, as she sat on her couch reading a book, she received a call from her mother. Emily hesitated before answering. It had been a few weeks since their last meeting, and she wasn't sure what to expect. "Hi, Mom," Emily said, her voice cautious. "I've been thinking about what we talked about," her mother began. "And I want to do more than just apologize. I want to show you that I'm committed to changing. I'm willing to work on myself." Emily felt a mix of emotions. She wasn't sure if this was another empty promise, but there was something in her mother's voice that felt different this time. "Okay," Emily said, taking a deep breath. "I'm willing to listen. But you have to understand that it's going to take time. I'm not going to rush into anything." Her mother agreed, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt a sense of cautious optimism. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, she felt like they were moving in the right direction. She had made the choice to stand up for herself, and now she was learning to navigate the complicated journey of healing. Emily knew that there would be ups and downs, but she was no longer afraid. She was in control of her own life, and nothing was going to change that. As the weeks went by, Emily started to feel a shift within herself. The decision she had made to set boundaries with her mother was something that, in many ways, she had been afraid to do for years. But now it felt like the first real step toward living her own life, free from the constant pull of her mother's expectations. Yet, despite her resolve, there were moments when doubt crept in. Emily was still processing the complex emotions surrounding her relationship with her mother. Could things really change? Or was this just another cycle of disappointment waiting to happen? Her mother's apology had felt genuine, but Emily wasn't sure if it was enough to undo the years of damage. She wanted to believe that her mother could change, but Emily was learning that change had to come from within, not just from words but from actions. One day, Emily found herself sitting at her kitchen table, staring out the window as she thought about her next steps. She had moved forward with her life, focusing on her work and her friends, but there was still that lingering question: what would happen next with her mother? She had taken control of her life, but could she continue to build a relationship with her mother on her own terms? Or was it time to let go completely? She picked up her phone and typed a quick message to Sarah. Do you think it's possible to forgive someone and still protect yourself from them? Sarah's reply came almost immediately. I think it's possible, but it's about balance. You can forgive someone without letting them back into your life the same way. You don't have to let your guard down just because you forgive them. You set the terms of your relationship. Emily smiled at the message. It was exactly what she needed to hear. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about finding a way to move forward that didn't compromise her own well-being. She didn't have to forget the pain, but she could choose to not let it control her anymore. That evening, Emily took a walk through the neighborhood trying to clear her head. She thought about how much she had grown over the past few months, how much she had learned about herself. She had spent years trying to meet her mother's standards, always feeling like she fell short. But now she realized that her worth was never tied to her mother's approval. She was enough just as she was. When she returned home, Emily sat down to write in her journal. Writing had become a way for her to process everything. Her feelings, her thoughts, her fears. As she wrote, she reflected on the first time she had stood up to her mother. She remembered the knot in her stomach, the fear of confronting her, but also the strength she had felt afterward. She had set a boundary, and for the first time, she had spoken her truth without apology. Emily smiled softly as she closed her journal. She was still on her journey, and it wasn't always easy, but she was learning to trust herself. She knew there was still work to be done with her mother, but she was no longer afraid to take that next step. The following weekend, Emily decided to visit her mother. She had been hesitant to reach out at first, but she knew that if she wanted to move forward, they would need to talk again. This time, however, it would be on Emily's terms. She had spent so many years trying to please her mother, but now she was taking control of the narrative. She wasn't going to let her mother's behavior dictate her life anymore. When Emily arrived at her mother's house, she took a deep breath before knocking on the door. Her mother answered quickly, a look of surprise crossing her face as she saw Emily standing there. Emily, her mother said, her voice softer than usual. I wasn't expecting to see you. I wanted to talk, Emily replied, her voice steady. I've been thinking about our last conversation, and I think it's time for us to set some ground rules for our relationship. Her mother nodded, gesturing for Emily to come inside. I understand, she said quietly. I know I've made mistakes, and I don't want to keep hurting you. Emily sat down at the kitchen table, her mother joining her. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what you said, Emily began, and I want to make it clear that I'm not doing this for you, or for anyone else. I'm doing this for me. I need to be able to live my life on my own terms, without feeling like I'm constantly fighting for your approval. Her mother's expression softened. I understand, Emily. I've always wanted the best for you, but I've never known how to show it. I've always pushed you because I wanted you to be strong, but I see now that I've been pushing too hard. I'm sorry. Emily felt a mixture of emotions. Her mother's words were validating, but they also reminded her of the pain she had endured for so long. I'm not asking for perfection, Mom, Emily said quietly. I just need you to respect me. I need you to see me for who I am, not for who you want me to be. Her mother nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I can do that, she said softly. I can respect you. I'll try, Emily. I really will. The conversation didn't end with a sudden breakthrough, but it was a step in the right direction. Emily felt the weight of her mother's apology, but she also knew that words weren't enough. Change had to come from actions, and she couldn't rush the process. For the first time, Emily felt like she was taking control of her life, not just for herself, but for her relationship with her mother. She had set her boundaries, and now it was time for her mother to respect them. As Emily left her mother's house that day, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. It wasn't about fixing everything at once. It was about moving forward one step at a time. She had taken back her power, and that was all she needed for now. The weeks following Emily's meeting with her mother were marked by a quiet determination. She had taken control of her life, setting boundaries and confronting the long-standing issues with her mother. Yet, even as Emily moved forward, the uncertainty about the future lingered. She had been living with the fear of being controlled for so long that now, even with the change in her mother's behavior, Emily found herself questioning how much of the past could truly be left behind. She spent more time focusing on herself, finding solace in her work, and in the company of friends who respected her boundaries. But when she wasn't busy, Emily would often find herself reflecting on her relationship with her mother, wondering if they could ever truly heal the damage done. The conversation with her mother had been difficult, but there was a small spark of hope in Emily's heart. The apology had been heartfelt, and her mother's willingness to change seemed genuine. However, Emily knew that actions spoke louder than words, and she needed to see real change before she could fully trust that things would be different. That's when she received a message. It was from her mother, and Emily hesitated before opening it. "I've been thinking about everything we discussed. Can we meet again soon? I want to show you that I'm committed to change." Emily sat in silence for a moment, reading and rereading the message. It was hard not to feel conflicted. She wanted to believe that her mother was truly ready to change, but the hurt of the past was still fresh. With a deep breath, Emily replied, "Okay, let's meet tomorrow." The next day, Emily walked into the cafe, her heart racing. As she saw her mother sitting at a table by the window, her mother's posture was different, more vulnerable than the stern, controlling figure Emily had known for so many years. As she approached, her mother stood up, and for the first time, Emily saw a softness in her eyes that had been missing for a long time. "Hi, Emily," her mother said, her voice tentative. "Thank you for meeting me." Emily nodded, taking a seat. "I wasn't sure if this was the right thing, but I wanted to try," her mother continued, looking down at her hands. "I know I've hurt you and I want to make it right. I don't expect everything to be fixed immediately, but I hope you can see that I'm serious." Emily listened carefully. She didn't speak right away, her mind processing everything her mother had said. She had heard similar words before, words that hadn't been followed up by action. But this time there was something different in her mother's voice, something that felt real. "I'm not expecting perfection," Emily said slowly, her voice calm but firm. "What I need is consistency. I need to know that I can trust you, that I can trust what you say, and know that your actions will match up with it." Her mother's eyes filled with tears and she nodded. "I understand. I know I failed you, but I am trying to change. I can't promise it will be easy, but I will work on it. I don't want to lose you, Emily." The words hit Emily hard, stirring a mixture of emotions within her. She wasn't sure if she could forgive everything her mother had done in the past, but there was a part of her that wanted to believe it was possible. She had spent so many years hoping for her mother's love and approval, but this was different. This wasn't about pleasing her mother anymore. It was about finding peace for herself. "I don't know if I can fully forgive you right now," Emily admitted, "but I'm willing to try. We can start slow, but you have to show me that you're committed to change. I can't keep living in the past, and I don't want to carry that weight anymore." Her mother reached across the table, her hand shaking slightly. "I understand. I won't push you. I'll prove to you that I can change. I want to be a better mother to you. I want to build something real between us, something that's based on respect, not control." Emily felt a mixture of relief and skepticism. She wanted to believe her mother, but the scars of the past were deep. Still, there was something in her mother's voice that made Emily think this time might be different. For the first time in years, Emily felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't going to rush into anything, but she could see the possibility of a better relationship between them, one built on mutual respect and understanding. Emily knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, and it would take time for her mother to prove that she could change. But for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was no longer fighting a losing battle. After their meeting, Emily felt both exhausted and hopeful. The conversation had been difficult, but it was also a step in the right direction. She wasn't sure where it would lead, but she was finally in control of her own life, and that was enough for now. She didn't need her mother's approval to be happy, but she did need a relationship built on honesty and respect. And if her mother was willing to work toward that, Then Emily was ready to take the next step. She wasn't going to let the past define her future. Emily spent the next few days reflecting on her journey, on how far she had come, and on the work that still lay ahead. She had set her boundaries, stood up for herself, and finally taken control of her own happiness. And no matter what happened next with her mother, Emily knew that she was on the right path. Several weeks had passed since Emily's heart-to-heart with her mother, and although there had been small signs of progress, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She had been trying to move forward with her life, but the unresolved tension between her and her mother still lingered in the background. She knew that healing wouldn't happen overnight, but there were moments when it felt like she was living in limbo. Emily had been focusing on her work and spending time with her friends, but even then, she couldn't help but wonder if she had done the right thing by giving her mother another chance. Had she set the right boundaries, or had she been too lenient? Could things truly change, or was she setting herself up for more disappointment? One evening, Emily was sitting on her couch, sipping her tea and scrolling through her phone, when she received a text from her mother. It had been a few weeks since they'd last spoken, and Emily had been waiting for a sign, something to indicate whether or not her mother was following through with the promises she had made. She opened the message. "Emily, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to make things right. Can we talk?" Emily stared at the screen, her heart racing. She had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure what to make of it. She had spent so many years hoping for things to get better, but this time it felt different. She wasn't sure if she was ready to dive back into that uncertainty, but she also knew that avoiding the conversation wouldn't make things better. After a few moments of deep contemplation, Emily typed her response. "Okay, we can talk tomorrow." The next day, Emily arrived at the coffee shop early, her mind a swirl of thoughts. She wasn't sure what to expect from this conversation, but she knew it would be another pivotal moment in her relationship with her mother. She wasn't expecting everything to be resolved, but she needed to know that her mother was truly committed to making changes. When her mother arrived, she looked slightly different, still carrying the familiar air of uncertainty, but there was something new in her demeanor. She was no longer defensive, and the usual harshness in her voice seemed to have softened. "Emily," her mother began, her voice gentle, "I've been reflecting on everything we've talked about. I know I've hurt you, and I've been trying to understand why I've behaved the way I have." Emily listened carefully, watching her mother's eyes, looking for any sign that this wasn't just another apology. "I'm sorry for all the things I've said and done. I know I've pushed you too hard, and I've never really understood how much it hurt you," her mother continued. "But I want you to know that I'm working on changing. I'm not perfect, but I want to do better. For you and for myself." Emily sat quietly for a moment, processing her mother's words. It wasn't the first time her mother had apologized, but something felt different this time. Her mother's words were not just about taking responsibility. They were about acknowledging the pain Emily had felt for so long. "I hear you," Emily said softly, "but it's not just about saying sorry. It's about showing up, not just when it's convenient for you, but every day. I need to see real effort. It's not enough to say you're sorry if your actions don't match your words." Her mother nodded, her face softening with understanding. "I know, Emily. I've been selfish for so long, and I've taken you for granted, but I want to be a better mother to you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Emily took a deep breath, her emotions rising. She had always wanted to believe in the possibility of healing, but she knew that her healing couldn't depend solely on her mother's actions. She had to stay firm in her own boundaries. "I can't forget everything that's happened," Emily said quietly. "I've carried so much pain for so long, and it's not something I can just let go of, but I'm willing to move forward on my terms. And that means setting boundaries that protect my peace, even if that means distancing myself when necessary." Her mother's eyes welled with tears, and she reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly. "I understand, Emily," she whispered. "I'll do my best to respect your boundaries. I can't undo the past, but I want to work on being better for you, for us." Emily felt the familiar knot in her stomach, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was the knot of relief that she had been longing for. For so long, she had feared that she would never be able to escape the cycle of manipulation and guilt. But here she was, sitting across from her mother, finally feeling like she could stand firm in her own truth. "I'm not expecting things to change overnight," Emily said. "But I do expect things to change. I need to see consistent effort. And I need to know that you're truly committed to respecting me as I am." Her mother nodded again, her face filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "I will," she said. "I promise." The conversation didn't feel like an immediate resolution, but it was a step in the right direction. Emily didn't know what the future would hold, but she felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in a long time. She had been so afraid of what would happen if she stood up for herself, but now she realized that standing up for herself was the only way forward. She didn't need to carry the burden of her mother's expectations anymore. She could live her own life, free from the weight of guilt and fear. As they finished their conversation, Emily felt a sense of closure, but also an openness to the future. She knew that her relationship with her mother would never be perfect, but that didn't matter anymore. She had taken control, and now she was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that she was stronger than she had ever been.